Serious, autistic people of Reddit, what is a social norm that you've just recently found out about? For the longest time I never realized that when someone asks you a bunch of questions it's because they're trying to make conversation with you. I always just answered as briefly as possible, like if it was a Q&A or something. It kind of confused me that every new person I met was so interested in my life that they all wanted to know where I was from and what my favorite color of 7 was. Now I realize how much of an asshole I actually came off as and why not many people wanted to talk to me. Fucking tired and depressed. I've had a long year, man. I work closely with Chinese companies and started talking about how this was going to be a pandemic back in December or January when it first started getting widely discussed in some of the companies I worked with. I kept arguing with people about how it was serious and they were like, it is just in China. Well, I got my shit together and ordered 800 cans worth of beans. I picked them up in March. I didn't leave my apartment for a whole month straight. I started baking my own bread but I always failed. It has these wet air pockets and it collapses. The last few loads were good, so that makes some feel better. Anyway, I have gotten tired of eating beans al.osd every day, but I only have a dozen cans of corn left, and I bought too many cans of peas. I have an entire shelf of tortillas left in the fridge and 25 kilograms of rice, but I sex-laid eggs at the top of 2 bags, and it is really frustrating. I also have 20 kilograms of flour left but I think I'll use that faster now that my bread is gone. So I think I'm getting that under control, and that is making me less stressed. A company I was working for fucked over all the employees with a threat and illegally cut our pay by 20%. I kept arguing and started organizing. They stressed me out a lot. After a couple months, they really cracked down on me. I told all my co-workers that we must unite and they immediately fired me for unionizing and violated our agreement in the law. That manager fucker is so demeaning and says shit like wishing you all the best and good health and whatnot whenever he emails me. I've never hated someone so much. After that, I felt more relieved, but now I don't have much to do, and without that stress, my PTSD and depression is worse. Growing up in a shitty area and being in a cult fucked me up. I only realized I was homeless for a while when I was like 19. It was odd. I suffered a lot of abuse and still can't sleep at night without the feeling like someone is going to kill me. I wish I could sleep next to my 9mm like back in the US. I also have a lot of immune problem and recently got hospitalized for abdominal pain. They sent me home the same day because it was too risky to be in the hospital. The coronavirus is dangerous for people like me. I had to get a colonoscopy a few days later. The doctor randomly out his finger in my butt without any warning and by fuck I almost kicked him in the face. I was like, dude, PTSD? His reaction was like, fuck, maybe that was a bad idea. I'm starting to return to normal, but still can barely function and clean my apartment. Sometimes I don't eat or drink almost all day because I don't have the strength to get up. Today I finally cleaned a bit. At least I made a little progress. I hope this week my phone will be activated. I have no internet because my cable company also decided to fuck me in the ass. They say I signed 2 contacts but refuse to provide proof. I paid hundreds to have a lawyer deal with them and they are such a mess, even he has no idea what's going on. He said he'd just pay the couple thousand to make the problem go away and not fight them. I said fuck them and I'd rather waste time and money and go to court. Even if they win, I won't pay the fuckers. This cable company recently got fined in France for causing people to kill themselves. Apparently working for them isn't any better. Well, fuck them. I hate them with a passion and I hope someday I'll have the money to start a rival company just go fuck them over too. I recently beat Halo 3 on PC again. That was a great distraction from my pain and misery for a bit. 10/10 would recommend. Now I am laying in bed with the overwhelming feelings I get every night that keep me up all the time because of my PTSD. Cults can really fuck you up. I don't even believe in hell but I get the same feelings I was indoctrinated with every time I go to sleep. Hopefully tomorrow I'll ride my bike. I haven't done that for a while. Thanks for asking. What about you? When I get stressed out I find it regulating and comforting to rock my body back and forth like I'm sitting in a rocking chair but I'm not in a rocking chair. I also find it comforting to do some stims like pacing or wringing my hands, playing with one hand with the other, or humming the same few bars over and over again. I also chew gum a lot as a more socially acceptable stim. When I'm super overwhelmed a good hand/arm flapping can calm me down quickly. Many of these things I can't do in public as it makes people think weird thoughts about me. For me it feels like something my body needs to do to feel calmer. It's a bit like having an itch you need to scratch. You can force yourself not to do it but it feels so much better/calmer/relieving to do it. I'm of the age where autism was just not on the radar of general society so, I'm not diagnosed. My mother once noted that she was pretty sure I would have been if I had been born later. I've always had trouble with certain social situations. Also, when I was very young, I hand flapped a lot when stressed. I still do it as a middle-aged adult, if things are incredibly stressful, but I do it in private away from people because I know it looks weird to them. I flap hard enough, I'm surprised I haven't lifted off the ground. It's usually a repetitive behavior or sound that a person does for a variety of reasons. X. To decrease anxiety, express frustration or other emotion, calm down when overstimulated, etc. Specific examples of stimming may be hand flapping, rocking back and forth, jumping, biting, and the list goes on. Most people stim in some way, tapping a pencil on the table, twirling your hair, but it can become an issue when it's disruptive or harmful to the person or others. I used to work with a child who stimmed off of string, and he would obsessively touch and manipulate shoelaces or other string throughout the day. Another child would toss and flip pencils or other small toys obsessively. No so much newly discovered, but as someone who just started a professional big kid job, passive aggressiveness and me being expected to do more than asked of me drives me nuts. If I fucked up, just tell me I fucked up and I won't do it again. That's how I learn and grow. But subtly hinting at me about something is going to go right over my head. Or instead of coming to me directly about a problem, gossiping about me to your co-workers. Skeptical that one sucks. Also, you ask me to do a task, I will do said task. I'm not psychic. I cannot predict what you need before you need it unless I have been working with you for a long time. I also don't know how to argue, stand up for myself very well. Like if I'm being criticized for something that was actually not my fault, I always just nod and take it BC, otherwise I feel like I'm just making up excuses. I feel like autistic people might make even less eye contact than the regular person, but constant, unabated eye contact looking into the other person's soul while you are talking to them isn't natural either. I'm in medical school and we have health psychology as a subject, and that's actually one of the biggest myths about communication skills. Unnatural, lasting, dead center eye contact actually makes people uncomfortable, and in a normal conversation it's more the listener who looks at the speaker and the speaker making occasional eye contact to make sure the speaker is paying attention or understands what has been said. My younger sister and I are autistic, and when we were younger we had the following conversation. My sister: did you ever think about, when someone is talking to you, where are you supposed to look? Me: yes. Actually I have thought about this a lot. And, the part where you're supposed to look is the person's mouth. Because that's where the words are coming out. My sister: oh. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Me: I know. It does. Now I never worry about that problem anymore. First, I wanted to address that apologizing because you've been made to feel that everything is your fault is a normal response to emotional manipulation/abuse/trauma. If you can work to reframe how you perceive events as not being your fault, or not being something in your realm of control, that's a great start, and long-term coping mechanism. Instead of saying I'm sorry, which makes the negative, blame and responsibility fall on you, replace it with a phrase that turns the conversation back on the person you're speaking to. Some examples. You're 5 minutes late to a dinner. Instead of apologizing, say thanks so much for waiting, I really appreciate your patience. Your friend is complaining about her really awful day. Don't apologize, you didn't make her day terrible. Instead say, that sounds really awful. How can I support you right now? Your partner spilled their drink on accident and they're frustrated. You didn't spill it, so don't apologize. Try, oops, let me grab a towel, instead. Should you never apologize? Of course not. Eventually something will be your fault, and you should probably use the 3-part apology: I am sorry, for the thing that happened, how you'll change your behavior in the future to mitigate. If whatever you're apologizing for doesn't pass the 3-part apology test, you probably don't need to apologize. It isn't an expression. A stim is a physical or emotional stimulation that calms and soothes autistic people. It's generally considered inappropriate in public as it looks odd. I let my wrists go limp and shake my hands. Think trying your hands without a towel or air dryer, but more violent. I sometimes can't help it. Ah, okay. I've never been diagnosed, but I've had severe issues from early childhood trauma that have quite some overlap with autism, and I too have my physical means of calming the emotions in public. I'll rub the top of my head or will stretch out my chest, for example, as to counteract the squeezing tension. I think it probably depends on what you actually do to stim. I'm sometimes a twitchy person, or when I'm anxious I'll twist at my clothing. People sometimes notice, but I've only ever had one person say anything about it, and they only mentioned it because they knew I was lying about being okay because of it. Lol, I think people are a lot more understanding than they used to be. There are so many cultural expectations and little rituals around gifts, hospitality, generosity. And also a ton of rituals surrounding food. Every culture has some and they're often very different. And people tend not to notice their own culture's customs. I find all this fascinating, especially since learning about other people's customs helps me see my own. Everyone struggles with this to an extent. It's part of a dance where it conveys politeness, but not always an expectation that you'd actually pay. It's backfired on me a few times, though it usually evens out. Usually when I offer I'm more than willing to pay. Afterwards, you have to pay next time. The easiest way to avoid this is to either offer to pay first, and mean it, or take care of the check and then inform everyone. That way they're in the awkward position of having to pay for the next meal/drinks. I love the Seinfeld about this. Jerry breaks up with his girlfriend because she doesn't do the dance and lets him pay as soon as he offers without her offering at all. Personally, I really don't like it if we either don't do the dance or someone offers to pick up the next activity/drink/meal. It ends up being a round robin of paying with friends. I learned a few weeks ago that small talk and the occasional silence are okay and perfectly acceptable. Also, offering my input isn't always appropriate. Being somewhere without someone talking unnerves me in a way that I don't know if I can ever describe. Like, we could be talking about whatever, sunshine and rainbows or whatever, and we run out of conversation, and they're totally fine with that. Meanwhile, I'm about to have an anxiety attack if someone does start talking immediately. It feels like I'm about to be murdered right there and maybe worse. It happened at a bar a few years ago where everyone had just stopped talking and I was freaking out. I think the best example is from SpongeBob, where he goes to Sandy's house and he starts thinking to himself, I don't need it, over and over again. Just change I don't need it to something like say something. Anything in that kinda how I feel. Also, change the person I'm talking with from someone trustworthy and good to a poor Christian Grey, and that's how I feel when no one is talking. So when I was younger I learned about sarcasm. But there are times when I overcorrect this and I'll hear someone say something offensive to me and I'll just think, oh, they must just be sarcastic, so I won't really react to it because I assume that I just don't get it, which in turn angers them more because they genuinely meant to insult me. This, as you can imagine, has given me mixed results. I'm an electrician and I have to say that working in a highly conservative-dominated trade filled with older working-class guys has made me aware of a whole new kind of individual after living for so long in an accepting, albeit sheltered community. To this day, I still don't know how to tell the truth without hurting someone. I do not understand why I can't tell people the truth. My mom usually tries to explain to me how I should respond, and when I messed up or think I did she would tell me if I had or hadn't messed up. Edit. So we were once at guests and they had cookies that looked like Oreos but they were not. I really like cookies, and the moment my mom said that they're Oreo cookies I told her otherwise. The host was standing with us too. My mom tried to get me to also say they're Oreo or close to something like it's like an Oreo, but I told her it wasn't. She also pulled her face in such a way as to say I should comply. The hosts were not that rich and bought a knockoff brand. I didn't know I had hurt the host's feelings. Also, when we go shopping my mom uses me as a filter because I'll tell her straight if I think something is ugly or doesn't suit her. I'll say that's ugly, don't buy it. You're not really just supposed to stare in their eyes the whole time. It's pretty normal to look away at other things that might catch your attention sometimes, or even looking at things or moving your eyes in certain ways can convey something about your understanding or acknowledgement. If the other person is speaking, you should be looking in their eyes the majority of the time. However, if they mention something you know to be nearby, it's normal to glance at it and back to them. If they say something someone else did that they meant to seem bad or cringe, you might sigh and close your eyes and shake your head or roll your eyes or something to show you agree that what the other person did was wrong. Or if they're talking and someone walks in or something makes a noise or something particularly distracting, no one will feel slighted or disrespected if you glance away and maybe nod or wave to someone who walked in or look at the distraction. This is not always okay to do, though, unless it's a significant thing happening, because if you keep looking away while the person is talking, then you might give them the impression that everything else is more important than they are, which doesn't feel good. When you're speaking, though, I feel like it's much more common to look away from the person you're talking to, because now it is your time to be expressive, and your eye movements and where you fix your gaze can help you be expressive in many ways. People often look down or to the side and up to show they're remembering something or trying to come up with an idea. Sometimes, a person talking about something very emotional will kind of stare ahead in the distance, a so-called 1,000-yard stare. Other times, one might look down in this circumstance. The person listening to you is more socially obligated to look in your eyes and listen, but as the speaker, this conveys emotional intensity. For the majority of the conversation, though, both people should be looking each other in the eyes. That being said, if there's a lull in conversation and no one is speaking, it would even be weird to keep staring in someone's eyes during the silence. Looking away and fixing one's pose so that it's not directed toward their conversational partner can show reflection on what's being discussed or contentment with the accord reached in the conversation, or even brewing anger or sadness or some other emotion based on what's being discussed in their facial expressions and other nonverbal cues. Yeah. Social interaction is pretty complex. And this is just how it is in my area of the world. Here's one I'm wondering about right now. Why are people so eager to go back to having parties and the like, when they know there's a potentially nasty virus around? Could they not text, email, or do Zoom with all these people individually? It's not the drinking. You can get alcoholic beverages at a liquor store and drink at home. I miss having my in-laws take care of one or both of my kids for a while, but I know that's not it for most people. Well, this was a couple years ago, but I was definitely a full-grown adult, so I think it counts. My sister and I were shopping at a small, high-end lingerie store, the kind where you're paying for really experienced fitting help as much as for the clothing items. And we were trying stuff on, and had this exchange. Sister: "Hey team_RCKT, do you think this one fits right?" Me, really loudly since I don't have much volume control: "Yeah, it looks great. And you can buy that brand way cheaper online, too." And my sister kinda quickly changed the topic, and later informed me that it's rude to talk about buying an item elsewhere while shopping. Especially while you're actively trying it on in their store. I still cringe a bit at that one, because it seems so obvious in retrospect, and I actually loved the shop, their stuff was good, and the owner/employees were very kind and helpful. To clarify, I didn't think the price at the store was bad, and wasn't trying to advise her against buying it. But my sister didn't live nearby, and I knew she was on a budget. In my head, I meant, so if you like it, you can order replacements when it wears out. It bothers me that so many autistic people in this thread have had one negative experience and then extrapolated a social rule based on that. I'm not criticizing. I've never been diagnosed autistic, but I have struggled socially. I just sympathize with the amount of mental calculus going on to figure this stuff out. And it makes me sad that the default assumption seems to be I must be doing something wrong because I'm autistic, rather than that person has weird rules/expectations. Many of the things mentioned really are social rules, but a lot of it is bizarre, random stuff that autistic people have taken to be universal. In a neurotypical society, being autistic automatically drops your chances of being treated normal, so we try our best to stay as average as possible, or go completely eccentric. That's why social rules exist for us. I completely agree that some are just weird things one or two people prefer, but we observe, make the rule, test it, then edit it to fit the general consensus. I wish we could stop holding some social etiquette standards that are hard for autistic people, but until we do, we have to try our best at being normal and rely on a mental checklist of what's right and wrong in each situation. Not super recently, but it seems to me that to basically everyone I know, in my age group/school, being overly nice to someone, me, not patronizing, but along that road, is a normal thing to do. Some people do it very obviously and patronizingly, whereas most of my friends either don't notice that they do it, or are very good at hiding it. I don't really get it.